Welcome to another segment of Politics Wrap right here on SABC News. There's a lot that we're reflecting on tonight on the politics front, but we're starting off with this story. Implement our demands or face the wrath of young people. That's a threat the ANC Youth League made to the private sector and government when it delivered its memorandum to the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. Thousands of Youth League supporters marched to the bastion of the capital to demand action on critical economic issues affecting the youth of South Africa. The march is reminiscent of the 2011 march of the Youth League led by then Youth League President Julius Malema, who now heads the Economic Freedom Fighters. We're joined in studio by the Youth League President, Mr. Colin Malachi. Mr. Malachi, thank you so much for joining us on SABC News.
Thank you for the invite.
So, 13 years down the line, you're back again at the JSE, demanding the very same things that you demanded in 2011. What makes you think that the private sector and government will actually heed your call this time around?
Yeah, 13 years later, we're even bigger. You know, the last time we were there, we were about 3,000, 4,000. This time around, we're over 20,000 young people. Now it means that the demand has increased and young people are more committed to fight for the economic freedom in their lifetime now, not later. And we believe that we've made a warning to the private sector and also government that the issue of unemployment is becoming a disaster in South Africa. As the ANC Youth League, we've declared a disaster, and we feel that both private and government partnership is important to resolve the disaster that we're in.
And Colin, you've also made threats to actually intensify your action and take your fights to the union buildings. I mean, you had said, Cyril Ramaphosa says, and Aguwe union buildings, we told President Ramaphosa that we'll go out in our numbers to campaign for the ANC during the elections. But it's not an empty check. It's not a blank check. We want the youth of South Africa and told them that the ANC of Ramaphosa needs to create jobs.
If you remember, we declared clear as early as before the elections that unemployment is in South Africa. And we've made the president make commitments. And if you have been following our rallies and everywhere else, the president made commitments on export quotas for beneficiation processes. The president made commitments and announcement. One of the announcements the president made was to put aside 23 billion to upskill the youth, which will upskill close to 2.5 million young people. Now, and even then we said it, it's not new. We said it that, President, we believe that you will deliver all of these matters because the youth of the country, the unemployed, the disaster, they'll be on drugs, they'll be on crime, and our townships have become holidays, every day, Monday to Monday, the youth are running around the streets on drugs, drinking alcohol because they're becoming hopeless every day. And as the voice of the voiceless, as the Youth League, we have a role to make sure that their issues are resolved. As much as we've committed to them, that is only the government of the ANC that can resolve their problems. Now, when you commit, we have a responsibility to also monitor that those that we've committed to, they receive what they deserve.
And if you don't, if those commitments don't gain fruition?
I'm sure you've seen us, if the commitment of walking for 17 kilometers, it tells you on a Friday, with so many young people who are unemployed, it tells you our level of commitment. And the president knows very well that we will go to the union building and demand the issues of the youth to be resolved. Because see, the reality is that if the Youth League does not lead this process of resolving these problems, opportunists will come in and regime change forces will come in to try to collapse this country because of that unemployment. If you can go to our township any day, the youth are all ready for inaction. They are ready to vandalize. Anyone who can say vandalize, they vandalize because they are frustrated and hopeless. Now, as the Youth League want to lead them to the right direction, and we're saying that the president, through his powers, needs to firstly discipline capital. We can't have listed companies in the JSE that are not reinvesting into the economy of the country, that are not committing to the reindustrialization program of the African National Congress and of the country to create employment. It can't be right that our raw materials leave our country every day to go and revive other industries elsewhere, but not where they must assist. It can't be right that our factories have been turned into churches or informal settlements. You can go as close as Alexander, areas where we should be economic active, and no longer economic active because it's very difficult to manufacture in South Africa. People are importing goods. We are known for building malls, not factories. We are known for exporting raw materials. We've not even set up agri-processing centers in agricultural areas so that we employ the youth. Now, I'm saying we give them solutions. We're not a youth that complains. We're youth that brings in solutions on how to resolve problems, and we know that they're resolvable. It just requires a political will and commitment.
As we were engaging with some ANC Youth League supporters today at the march, others, a lot have actually lamented the formation of the GNU. You made very interesting comments today. Well, some may say it's a political statement, but you had said that by its anniversary, 100 days, loosely translated, they're going to be celebrating 100 days of the GNU, but let them tell us where the jobs are. That's pressure.
You know, we say on top of the agenda of the celebration of the GNU, we really have to explain what is the plan of creating jobs. Everyone's obsessed about the economic structure of this country and jobs. No one wants to know about how ministers are behaving and how they are moving around, how excited they are to be in government and have blue lights. People want to know how their lives are going to be changed from now on moving forward. And that's why South Africans supported the GNU. They supported the GNU because they believe that it will take them out of chaos and there will not be wars in this country or like political battles or conflict like in other countries. That's why it's very important also to clarify one issue that was, there's a headline by Eyewitness News that says, Youth League says anyone who fights with Helen Zille will be shown the streets. It's not true. I said that in the DA, I'm not saying I said in the DA, they are scared of Helen Zille, that's why he's messing up. Now anyone that fights with him is scared to be shown the door. I said that Steenhuisen must pull up his socks and take charge of this organization that is leading. That's what I said. Now, the headlines were misleading and I feel that it was important that I clarify them.
Your general assessments of the GNU over the past 100 days as the Youth League, some within the Youth League, yourself have been critical of the GNU.
Look, it was the first time we dealt with the GNU in this culture. Like before we dealt with it in '94, it was because of political management. But the ANC still had the hegemony to make decisions and decide on their own. But this time around, it's a GNU forced by voters, which has put the largest organization at 40%. Now you are starting to deal with new characters. You are working with people that you've never worked with before. You know, it's a very difficult one. Others want to behave like they have a parallel government. You know, they want to compete with the government led by President Cyril Ramaphosa. Now it's a very difficult one because we have never done it before. Now there's no reference to say that when we're at 40% this time around, this is how we managed it. Now it's the first of the generation to deal with it. That's why we don't want to go back there. That's why in the next elections we want the ANC to give overwhelming majority. So South Africans are not put in this position that they're in again.
It's quite interesting that the ANC Gauteng chair was also there to show his support to young people today, Mr. Panyaza Lesufi. And at the backdrop of what we've been seeing lately, criticism against him, the DA labeling him as a stumbling block to the formation of a GNU in the province. The SACP last week, and they're going to be joining us shortly, saying that alliance partners should pull ranks and protect him. Do you agree?
Look, I think maybe they're protecting him from the DA. They can't protect Panyaza from the ANC, who is the chairperson of. Panyaza is a member of the National Executive Committee of the ANC. He's a chairperson of Gauteng. We're not a federal organization. Decisions of nationals bind to Panyaza. That's why in his own interview, he mentioned that his support for the GNU and why he believes the GNU is working. Now, the media is very selective on what you said. What Panyaza said is that the DA is not a branch of the ANC, and the ANC is not a branch of the DA, and Helen Zille is not our boss, which is true. I've repeated that in many of my interviews, that we don't want, because I have a strong belief that it is deliberate to isolate and try to divide the organization unnecessary. There's no confusion on how to manage the GNU in the African National Congress. We're all utilizing the same uniformity. When we have differences, we're a very democratic organization. We call an NEC meeting, we discuss and debate amongst ourselves on how to deal with it. We don't know GNU. It's the first time we have to deal with it. Now and again, we have to engage and show each other and share notes on how best to deal with it.
Colin, just in 30 seconds, you mentioned something very interesting on stage, mentioning the Minister of Employment and Labour, that they withheld money that was actually supposed to go to young people. How will you then, as the ANC Youth League, ensure that you hold your ANC employees accountable when they're supposed to actually implement policies of the ANC Youth League?
There's not going to be a free lunch. They know wherever they are. I'm sure they've seen them as well. We're not a youth league that plays, a youth league of action. We're going back to summoning them every Tuesday. We'll also summon the new minister to say that how far are you with this program. It's a commitment the president made before elections and said that the youth will be placed before the elections. Now, it can't be a program that is not implemented even now. Now, it's not the only ministers. All the ministers, including the DTIC ministers, especially the economic cluster ministers, who are going to sit on them every day until the structure of the economy has changed.
Okay. Mr. Malachi, thank you so much. Of course, that was the president of the ANC Youth League. And of course, you've seen today members of the ANC Youth League marching to the JSE, delivering their memorandum. We're going to take a quick break. Welcome back to the Politics Wrap. The South African Communist Party is convening a 3-day Central Committee Plenary meeting from Friday to Sunday. The Central Committee, which is the highest decision-making body of the SACP between its national congresses, meets once every 4 months to review the political, economic and social developments of the country, as well as receive reports on the work of the organization and tasks facing the working class and the party. The party's General Secretary, Mapaila, will deliver the SACP's political reports outlining strategic and imperatives for the party. The SACP has recently been critical of the GNU. Now joining us is Dr. Alex Mashilo of the SACP. Thank you so much for joining us in studio, and thank you for making time to actually come see us coming out of that CEC meeting. I think first and foremost, what will be the agenda for these 3 days and what is the focus?
The meeting started earlier today with a review of progress since the last Central Committee meeting, which was held just after the elections. That was in June. And dealing with the financial matters of the party as part of party building. Tomorrow in the morning, General Secretary Mapaila, as you said, will open the meeting by presenting the political report.
Alex, earlier on this week, we saw your alliance partners, COSATU, and today you just saw Mr. Mapaila from the ANC Youth League. They took to the streets over a number of issues, pressing issues about unemployment. And I was listening to Mike Shingang on Monday, and he had said that COSATU will, under the government of national unity, actually intensify their protests if they don't actually meet their demands. As a SACP, could we see some form of the same protests that are going to happen, or what form of action does the SACP actually have?
The COSATU National Day of Action on Monday was preceded by the SACP launching its Red October campaign with a focus on the cost of living crisis and a call for the implementation of the National Health Insurance now. What the COSATU Deputy President Mike Shingang said is our shared position. The reason is that there has been a rightward shift in the composition of the government. To believe that that rightward shift in the composition of the government will not impact government policy will be to ignore the political realities that came following the May 2024 elections. So if the working class does not mobilize consistently to assert the achievements of its immediate aims and the enforcement of its immediate interests, both outside of the government and pressurizing the government, the rightward shift that has happened in the composition of the government will impact the working class negatively.
We were just speaking about the GNU, and the ANC, your alliance partner, is also going to mark the 100 days with that open event where ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa will be addressing ANC members. You, as the SACP, as an alliance partner, has been very critical of the GNU. What is your assessment so far?
The ANC has won elections since April 1994 with outright majorities. In 2004, we experienced a decline in real votes, but we achieved a 2/3 majority. There was never a point where we came together to celebrate 100 days of those majorities. And if I were to reflect from the standpoint of the alliance, it would be great if the alliance worked together to develop a focus on what the government must do in the first quarter of its installation, which you add 10 days to that quarter gives you the 100 days. So there was no that working together in the alliance. When we went out to campaign, you will recall the slogan there led by the ANC, "Together we can do more." You are drawing our attention to the fact that the ANC will be marking 100 days. So that leaves out the working together we can do more. There is no joint assessment by the alliance of what happened in these 100 days. So we wouldn't like to speak on behalf of the ANC it would have been great to maintain the spirit, together we can do more. That spirit was not there, and there is no collective assessment. So the Central Committee will reflect when the Party General Secretary Mapaila presents the political report tomorrow about the situation.
So you talk about that, collective efforts from the Alliance sitting down and taking stock of that 100 days. Since the formation of the GNU, has the Alliance actually met?
Just after the elections, we held a secretariat meeting, but it was not a substantive secretariat meeting. It was a briefing session by the ANC on what it called exploratory talks. We also held an Alliance Political Council. Again, it was not a substantive Alliance Political Council. It was a briefing to the Alliance partners on the ideas that the ANC had. We used the opportunity to present what we stood for at that time. When we went out to campaign, we were campaigning against the forces that wanted to remove the ANC from power. Those forces started what they called the Moonshot Pact. Later, they came together in the so-called multi-party charter, doing their best to achieve a collective victory. They failed to remove the ANC. On the other side, we were campaigning for the ANC. So what you can see from the outcomes of the May 2024 elections is that the forces that have campaigned for the ANC are outside the mainstream political process. I mean, you have had conversations reported in the media regarding what the partners to the Government of National Unity have said, but the Alliance did not sit down to say we campaign using a manifesto that we together adopted. It is now time to translate the manifesto into a medium-term strategic framework or the medium-term development plan. How do we go about? How do we give practical effect and implementation, monitoring and evaluation effect to what we agreed upon? Since May, we have had no political session to reflect on those. The sessions we have held would have been technical sessions, but they have not had any effect because there was no political functioning of the alliance.
Okay. Alex, I just want to quickly, briefly, just get your reaction. Earlier on, my colleague Samgelo Masebo spoke to the DA leader, Mr. John Steenhuisen, and Steenhuisen says that the non-negotiables for the DA in the GNU is to support the implementation of the Bela Act pertaining to certain clauses, and they will not support the NHI in its current form. Your reaction is the SACP, briefly.
We supported the Basic Education Laws Amendment Act, and these are the reasons. In provinces like Gauteng, you have school governing bodies in communities that were designated as white-only communities, mostly speaking Afrikaans. And these school governing bodies, in their determination of language policy and admission policy, adopted practices that excluded particularly Africans who couldn't speak that language, going back to 1976. This resulted in activists from Gauteng province like Banyaza Lesufi, when he was the MEC for education, fighting that situation. Those issues ended in the courts of law. So the adoption of the Education Laws Amendment Act was a response to the court orders that found unfair discrimination in the practices followed by those school governing bodies. You will remember the case of the Rivonia High School. I was leading the Young Communist League of South Africa in Gauteng at the time, and I was working with the former MEC of Education, Barbara Creasy. What a great lady, what a great leader in leading the education space. So to answer, to respond positively to the court judgments and the fact that we need to forge a non-racial society, the provisions on the admission and school language policy were advanced. Most importantly is that no school language policy must culminate in the type of discrimination, in unfair discrimination. Now, you have political groupings that are organized to preserve old order South Africa. You listen to the likes of Solidarity, the likes of AfriForum, they talk about Afrikaans schools. Hang on, we are in South Africa here. There can't be Afrikaans schools. There must be schools for all the people, okay? African schools must have been during the apartheid era. In this democratic dispensation, our schools must be schools for everybody, must be schools for everyone. That discrimination must go. That is what the two sections, Section 4 and Section 5 of the Basic Education Laws Amendment Act seek to do. I campaign for them as the leader of the YCL in this province, and we campaign for those clauses as the South African Communist Party, to argue that those clauses must not be implemented. When there is unfair discrimination, the head of education department in provinces cannot intervene is just unfair. So that bottom line, it's a wrongful bottom line. It shows the contradictions in the GNU. And then those contradictions have resulted, I mean, for the first time, Natasha, since April 1994, when the President of the Republic signs a bill passed by the majority of Parliament representing the people, the minister decided to boycott that event. That would not have happened under Mandela, under Mbeki, under Mutante, under Zuma. We are seeing this for the first time. So to the extent our comrades are fair, they will reflect and say, what is this really? And what do we take? What do we do? What do we say about these things? And that was compensated by the postponement of the implementation of the two clauses.
Okay, Alex, we have to leave it there. Unfortunately, this is all we have today on the Politics Wrap. Of course, that was Dr. Alex Mashilo from the SACP.